I mean, we invest in AI since 2018. We have 500 data scientists inside iFood, 2,000 engineers. We have 125 proprietary machine learning models. We partner with OpenAI for more than a year. We are seeing changes internally that are dramatic.
Diego, it's a pleasure to have you as my guest. Welcome to the J Curve.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. I was waiting for this.
So I want to start with a little bit on you and talk about the critical stages of your life, as well as critical people to your life that impacted your mindset, your entrepreneurial mindset, and forced you on this path. And I was thinking about starting with your upbringing and your father being the first or one of the first examples of what it takes to be an entrepreneur in a market like Brazil.
Yeah, that's a great topic. So should we start with me crying because of how emotional is this? No, but thanks very much for the question.
We can cry in the process, like we can do that too.
Yeah, well, my story starts with, I was born in the countryside of Brazil, in a midtown, like 200,000 people. My father is a lawyer, and he became an entrepreneur. He built a company that was not a big company, but was quite representative in the city. It was a transportation company. Since I was a kid, my father brought me to his company. He gave me the chance to experience all the special situations that you live as an entrepreneur. So when I was 18, I had the chance to see people getting fired. I saw my father losing big contracts, having accidents, and I saw him managing all of this. I usually say that my father was not only a father, but also a friend and also a mentor, because he gave me the chance to experience this.
Why did you decide to pursue a law degree?
So, first of all, I'm a privileged person. I'm white, I'm a man, I came from a middle to high income class. I have access to the best schools. I had access to everything that I wanted. So when you have this kind of privileges in Brazil, you don't think too much. Success is guaranteed, Olga.
Yeah.
My father is a lawyer and he became an entrepreneur. In my mind, that would be the path because it worked for him. So I arrived at the law school and it was a terrible experience because in Brazil, law schools are focused on process, justice, courts, and etc. It's not about building. It's not about originating. So one day I was at the school, a friend arrives and say, "What are you doing?" I said, "Nothing." And you? "Oh, I'm going to an interview." "But I don't want to go to this interview." I said, "Why?" "Because it's for a position that I really don't like. It's capital markets, and I hate that." And I told him, "Oh, that's my dream. I mean, we're talking about IPOs, follow-ons, M&As, bond offerings, and etc. I would love to go." And he said, "Go." So his name was Ricardo, and the name of the law firm is Matos Filho. It's the largest and best law firm in Brazil. I arrived there. A person comes and say, "Who is Ricardo?" I say, "It's me." I do the interview, and we finish, and she said, "Okay, I liked you. I will introduce you to the lawyers that will conduct the final interview." At that point, I said, "Okay, so I have to tell you one thing. I'm not Ricardo. I'm Diego. There's no difference because we're almost the same people. We're in the first grade of university. But if I called you before to say that Ricardo was not coming and I would love to come, you would say no." So I took the shot. And she said, "That's brave." I was approved. And, I entered in the best phase of my life, professional terms. Back in 2003, Brazil was starting to live the dream. Inflation was under control, FX was under control, institutions were respected, Lula took place and didn't change anything that scared investors, and China boomed. What happened with Brazil? Brazil started to have its first great phase after the 60s and 70s. And I was there in a place where there was no activity before. Matos Filho was a large law firm, and the capital markets team was like 6 people. Today is like 300. So I had the chance to experience innovation phase. I had the chance to see people creating from scratch and not just copy and paste offering memorandums. In parallel, I studied economics, accounting, and finance by myself. 3 years in a row, every single day, including Saturday and Sunday. One CFO, after 9 months working with me in an IPO, approached me and said, you know what is leverage? You know how to discuss a balance sheet. You know what happens when the cycle turns up or down because of inflation, of interest rates. Come, you're not a lawyer, and I can be the one that will build the bridge for you. Roberto Amatuzzi is this person. He was one of the most recognized executives back in 2005-6. And Roberto, during his career, took a sabbatical. He went to one of the most recognized headhunter companies in the world and worked as a partner for a few years. So he has a talent to see people with great potential. And that's why Roberto brought me and put me in a middle manager of a publicly traded company. That didn't make any sense if you think very rationally.
So one of the things that I found really interesting in your life, you had your father, and then you had people in the law firm who stimulated your growth and skyrocketed your potential. Why do you think they cared about you and championed you and not one of the other hundreds of talented kids that came to work in the law firm?
That's a great question. Reality is that I don't know the answer, but I will try to figure out. First thing is, I was always the guy looking for big things. And when I say big, I'm not talking about money. I'm talking about the big shot, the big effort, the big challenge. All the people close to me during this journey that acted as mentors, they were big people. They were great entrepreneurs, executives, fathers, mothers, and so on and so forth. So I think that the first thing is they recognized on me, Olga, I wrote a book. I'm finishing the second one, and I'm now working on a movie that is going to one of the streaming platforms. So why the hell I'm doing that? Because I think big. It's not about what pays me. It's about finding purpose on what I'm doing. That's the big Diego that they saw. The second thing is I'm a very humble person. I have personality. I'm very energetic, but I'm humble to a point where I make more questions than I give answers. And reality is that big people, they like to teach you. They like to get all the knowledge, all the experience, and tell people what to do and how to do. And the third thing that I think it's important, I understand when I need someone. What I'm trying to say is a mentor is not a person that will help you every day in all your challenges. There are people great for one specific cycle. There are people that are perfect for other cycles. And when you have the ability to build this network that will give you a chance to make the swaps, what happens is that you never bother too much someone at the point that the person says, I will not talk to him again. And at the same time, you start to create credibility because one talk to each other and one says, oh, I know Diego. He's a humble guy. He thinks big. He is not stubborn. In the end, when you create credibility, it also opens a door for you.
One of the most impactful difference that individuals can drive in the society is to share the knowledge. And you share the knowledge across many different channels. You share it in the digital space for people who don't have a direct access to you. You share it as a mentorship sessions through Endeavor and iFood. And you did make a huge difference in people's business models and people's life. And we all know one of the examples, Vander, who is proud to be mentored by you. But I want to ask you why mentoring and sharing knowledge is so important to you. Why do you invest in this?
Because I hate our social structure in Brazil.
Tell me more.
Olga, we are a consequence of just a few people having access to things that can make difference in your life. We are a very racist society. We are a society that knows exactly what we like and what we don't like. And when we don't like, we don't give opportunity. When I went to my MBA at IMD in Switzerland, I entered in a classroom of 90 people, 42 different nationalities, which means 2 people per country on average. And I saw things that some people could achieve because they didn't have the barriers that we have. And that really touched me. It's about economy. It's about productivity. It's about having more people competing for a work which creates better output. And if we create a better output for this country, we generate wealth. If we generate wealth, people that you see on the streets dying, sleeping, they will stop at a certain point. So the case of Vander, for example, a guy like him could be in a big corporate office of a multinational company. He's not. He's building now company that generates wealth, that creates jobs, that make people dream with him. So I share contact. I make myself available for mentorships because we have to get this kind of people in Brazil and give them the chance to change entirely this space. I want to give you 2 examples that I like. I read a lot, and I used it to read 20 years ago about Jack Welch, and then people forget him. And then came Bill Gates, and then came Mark Zuckerberg, and then came Elon Musk. Can you see how dynamic is the capacity of Americans to create new leaders, new business, and etc.? You don't do that in Brazil. The top, 30 companies in Brazil are the same compared to 30 years ago. I don't have a problem with them. My problem is with the dynamics of the Brazilian society. So when I look to Vander, when I look to Nubank, when I look to iFood, when I look to all these startups that are breeding in Brazil, what I'm seeing is that in 10 years, they will be new companies with new logics, with more competition, with more people making money, and so on and so forth. The more you share, the more proactive and smart people get, the more they can shape a different future for the country.
What is, like, when you think about your mentorship sessions with startup founders, what's your most typical advice to them? What are the things that you're most frequently discussing with your mentees?
Well, the one that I most talk is strategy. 90% of the times we arrive at this. And you know why? In Brazil, we don't discuss strategy. Historically, there's no competition. Companies that lead the markets today are the same that was leading 20, 30 years ago. You know why? Because there are huge amount of barriers to entry. You call the government and it gives incentives to you. You call the government and you get a subsidized loan. You call the government and you create a law that does not allow you to import certain products from US, from Europe. So it creates a lot of barriers that in the end create fat cats like Garfield.
I love this.
They eat, they sleep, they're okay, but they don't do anything. So in Brazil, we don't discuss strategy because historically, you don't need to discuss strategy. So what happens is that most of the entrepreneurs, they don't really understand strategy. Always tell them, okay, so what you just explained, I can copy 100%. You're just building a commodity business model. How you can beat someone with a business model that doesn't have a strategy that clearly differentiates you. And then every time that I start with this, I recognize that people don't know the difference of the concepts. Barrier to entry, differentiation, competitive advantage. They don't understand these differences. And that's when we arrive to great discussions that is about, I'm here at point A, I'm going to point B, I have several options to bring me here to here. What's the best one for me? How do I say no to the other ones? And then everything gets clear for them. And they can make, I'm not saying the right decision in the end, but they are making clear decisions. And that's the main impact, I would say, that I have in these mentorship sessions.
What are the most scalable business models in tech ecosystem that you see today?
I saw a few ones related to payments, because every time that you are able to create something that embeds proprietary technology, which means you are the only one that can offer this, and this creates, for example, in payments, better cost structure for your client, it scales like this. Take the example of e-banks. There, it's not only cost, but also the architecture of payments. They are serving Netflix, they're serving Spotify, Uber, and so on and so forth. Pismo, talking about a $1 billion business, it's the same. I mean, they built something proprietary. As soon as it makes sense, everybody signs the contract and becomes a client. So I would say this is the most scalable one that I saw. The second one, it's difficult to be very sizable, but it's very scalable. It's what is going on in the creators economy. And people have a prejudice looking at them and say, oh, they're just influencers. Jesus, they are not influencers. They are, I tend to say to people that each influencer, it's piece of what Globo or CNN or BBC were getting in the past. But now this person, one by one, are taking the pie for them. Can you think about this? There's somebody right now in the countryside of Brazil, in a small city, that is making a good content, and Instagram is paying for him, and he doesn't need to move from his city. What this person would do without the access to that? Nothing. So this is very scalable, not necessarily sizable, because it's very difficult to have a sizable business in that space.
I think the interesting thing about creators economy that it gives opportunity to scale business to people who don't have venture capital, power law kind of ambitions.
Yes.
So you can build a decent business based on your passion. That is incredible. That's something that did not really exist to that extent
For
before.
sure.
You are like you're like a renewable energy. You are a battery that doesn't need to be charged, and you have so much knowledge that you share. How do you compensate for that resource? Who are your most important mentors from whom you learn as well, or who can expand and support your continuous personal growth? Who are those people?
Well, I would say 4 people. The first one is my father. He is the person where I seek wisdom. It's funny, in the past was knowledge. Now it's wisdom. The second person for me is Fabrizio, who is the founder of Movile and CEO of iFood. Fabrizio is one of the few people in Brazil who knows the value of being big with technology to create impact. And I didn't have access to that. I had access to people that think about being big or impact
or technology,
but never with these 3 things combined. The third person is my wife. And Carol is the person that disagrees 90% of the time with me. But
brave woman.
Well, I disagree also 90% of the time. We share different perspectives, but coming from the same common values. So we were able to create a safe space where we have the dialogue. So remember Socrates in Greece, it's about this, having the dialogue, making the questions, knowing that the person is just asking because she's looking for a better answer. And the fourth one is not a person, it's a thing, books. I read more than 95% of people in the world. I read like 2 books every month for 15 years in a row.
Can we talk about that for 1 second? What's your reading strategy? Do you read like every book that you start? How do you prioritize? What kind of books you read? And how do you keep this cadence?
Yeah, so what I do is I choose one topic to study, and I spend 3 to 4 months mostly on this topic. That's the first thing. The second one is I read once or twice a day. So I wake up very early in the morning, 5 a.m. I read something, and during the day, I take more an hour and read again. So there's a good consistency on that. Generally speaking, I never stop to read a book, even though I'm not enjoying, good, but I'm not enjoying, I don't stop. And finally, every time that I'm talking to someone that says, I read a good book, I go there and buy.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
You saw that,
yes? I saw that yesterday. You bought
Yes.
the Prosperity Paradox
Arrived
right
today.
away.
Yes. Yeah, I already put in my study room. It's connected to a few ones that have the same logic. At a certain point, I will start to read this.
So what are some of the topics that you've been exploring recently in your reading schedule?
What I'm reading right now, it's about longevity, and that's my personal goal. How can I live 120 years in a good shape? And when I say good shape, I'm not talking about if I'm going to be
It's not like
ugly
a
or
buttocks all
beautiful.
over your face.
It's
What
not
is it
about
called?
this.
Harmonization.
Yes. I mean,
I,
just
I
go to the
learned
doctor,
about
of
that. Oh
course.
my
Yeah.
God.
No, it's really about having a good body to walk, a good mind, continue to learn, and etc. I saw my grandparents ending in a very difficult situations because they didn't pay attention about their health throughout the life, and I want to change this. So that's what I'm reading right now. Before I read it about ethics, and why I read it about that, because everything will change with AI. So Olga got a car, she killed someone. I blame you. Olga got a driverless car, it had to make a decision, killed someone.
Who's
Who
to
do I
blame?
blame? Who do I blame? I really don't know. So the point here is not to say, I think you should blame. No, 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 no. You have to think about it. It's a completely different mindset. If you use the old frameworks, you're not going to be able to evolve. So I'm really thinking about this. And before I read about radical candor, I love this topic. I always tell people that between the problem and the solution, there's only one thing: information. So the more I share with you the real information, the real perspective, the real feeling, the more you're going to be able to think with me to close this gap. But in the culture of Brazil, we don't do that.
Let's keep talking. That's my
Right?
favorite.
Exactly. So tell her this is not good. But of course, bring that together with a tool that will help the person to go to the next stage. Offer your time to work on this. But if you don't understand psychology and if you don't understand tools to change your behavior because you didn't pay attention on this for the last 30, 40 years in your life, you will never master radical candor. Actually, if you don't master, you're going to procrastinate forever. So you'd never close this gap. Or you are so rude that you close this gap, but you destroy the relationship for all the time.
How do you practice radical candor and radical transparency and open, direct, honest feedback without being perceived as someone who's intimidating?
Well, first of all, I have to say that most of my career, I was seen as an intimidating person.
Welcome to the club.
So I'm saying this just to give the right impression. Throughout the time, I think I developed my own tool, which doesn't mean that works for you, for everybody, but it works for me. So the first thing is always start with context. If we don't understand context, we don't understand why it's important or it's not important anymore. The second one is I always make questions. I don't try to make affirmative sentences with my conclusion. When I make questions, I allow people to orchestrate and convince me that maybe I'm wrong, or I can get the gaps, the problems, the absence of logic, so it becomes more rational. And the third thing, which is very important, I always bring help. So there are things that I'm good at it, so I can offer more time to help. There are things that I'm not, but I know who are, so I make the connection. There are things that I know where the knowledge is, so I say, take a look on this. So I always end saying, there is something that I can offer you. And more importantly, every time that I finish these discussions and it's a good discussions, I say how proud I am from the person about this conversation.
Yeah, it's a sandwich concept. You
Yeah.
first kind of set up the premise and explain where you're coming from. Then you deliver the feedback in a direct way, and then you wrap it all up on the positive note.
Exactly.
I had to learn that because I'm coming from Russia. It's a very direct culture. So you don't practice like 10 stages of building trust or the shit sandwich
Yes.
concept. You express yourself the way you are. And it was a huge problem in the States. Like New York is not a problem, but in LA, for example, it's like a huge problem. People are super well rounded as well. So transitioning to iFood, I read something and then I'll ask a follow-on question.
Yeah.
After more than 10 years of working with the old economy, I finally changed my mindset. I received a job offer from Movile. That was indeed the biggest test to me, leaving my high paid job and accepting a salary that was 60% lower at Movile, when I still had 3 other job offers that were similar in pay to the one that I had at Suzano. So, walk me through your decision making process. You already mentioned Fabrizio a little bit, but I imagine his personality was one of the factors for you to make such a dramatic change in your lifestyle, type of work you do, type of time you allocate, and type of risk that you take.
So I come back from the MBA with one conclusion that Brazil will change, because there I really understood power of digital technology, which means something that is cheap, accessible, democratic, that you can learn by yourself. In Brazil, that was not clear, but I came from IMD with that clear perception. I remember one day I was reading the newspaper and there was an article mentioning Buscapé, 99, the ride
Taxi.
railing company, and Movile. And I said, Jesus, these are like 5, 10 years old companies. They are in the main newspaper. I mean, I read newspaper every day. I have never seen that. Newspapers were about the large corporations, the traditional ones. And I remember to think digital technology is definitely arriving in Brazil. And I started to search for this. And I found a place called Liga Ventures, which is an accelerator here in Brazil. I went there and I said, hi, my name is Diego. I'm director of finance of Suzano. Suzano is the largest pulp and paper company in the world. I saw that you have like startups here. Do you have space for mentors? And they said, of course. I mean, you were the director of finance of Suzano. So I went there and I started to mentor startups. And like a few months after, I was like in love. Girls and guys, very clever, getting a code, changing the product, showing me how the product is, and then getting a feedback and doing that again. And I said, what are the process? What are the meetings with agenda, with PowerPoint? And they said, we don't need it. And I saw that working. And that's when I started to read about lean startup. That's when I started to read about chapters, agile. One day my phone called. It was, you had the chance to talk to Veronica.
Yes,
right?
I recorded an episode with her.
Yes. So Veronica had a fund who was one of the main investors of Movile.
In Nova.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So a guy from there called Felipe, which was the principal, called me and said, Diego, we have a invested company that is going quite well. The company is becoming bigger and we need people that has the experience and sophistication to deal with this increase in complexity and size. Would you be interested to talk to them? So I go to Movile and then we had several conversations. It went pretty well. They called me and said, we liked you. Do you want to come? I said, yes. Okay, so that's the offer. Huge cut on my salary. And I said, okay.
Give it like a second thought.
No, never, 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 never. And I'm going to tell you, it doesn't mean it was easy. So let me explain like 2 social consequences of this. One is my parents called me and said, we never heard about this company. You were on the front page of the main Brazilian newspapers representing the company that you worked for. And now you were in a company that we don't even know the name. My friends did the same. A few ones said something bad is happening with Diego's career. The other
He's
social
falling off the
consequence
cliff.
is imagine how it is for a man who was created in an environment where man has to dominate, man has to be the strongest. Say, okay, now my wife gets more money and she's mainly responsible for the bills at home. This is like almost 8 years ago. It's tough to do that. It's tough to accept. Your ego fights to not accept this. So I said yes easily because I wanted, but it was not easy. It was not easy at all.
And your wife supported that transition?
Completely.
How did the
Completely.
conversation with her look like? Do you remember?
You know, she really know who I am. I'm the kind of guy who writes a book, produces a movie, while working like hell as an executive in a large corporation. So she knows me. She knows how much I dream. She knows how much I want, transform, impact, and etc. So in the previous companies, she always saw that I was not fulfilled. I was doing like liability management, bond offerings, hedge structures, and etc., which is cool, but you're going to do the same forever. As soon as you reach the top, you're going to do that forever. You don't discuss strategy in these companies, which is different when you have companies that need to build products that is going for the next wave, the next cycle. Think about Movile. Start as a messaging company, translate to almost a corporate venture company, and then do a great business in the educational space with Play Kids, and then in the ticketing space with Simpla, then on the food space with iFood, and so on and so forth. And Movile didn't buy these companies when they were successful. They bought like garage startups and made great companies. So it's so exciting that she supported me entirely.
What was the hardest part of this transition from corporate side into digital side of the table?
Everything.
Can you give me like
Whoa,
3
I
hardest
can give you
things?
100, but the top three. Well, the first one is when you work for a large company, people see you as a consequence of your chair. And this opens so many doors. You call a bank, it answers you. You call a consultant, it answers you. You call the newspaper, answers you. However, when you are working for a garage startup, nobody knows who you are. So the toughest challenge for me was, and I'm going to tell you how I realized that. I sent a message to a bank here in Brazil, 3 managing directors, saying, now I'm here and I'm having a problem. Can you just introduce me the right person to talk about this? I never got an answer. But these 3 MDs were people traveling with me for 15 countries, doing 10 road shows, making huge amount of money.
Email extension was not Suzano anymore.
Exactly. The second part was understanding how you test things, how you develop ideas. When you are in the corporate world, you have a committee, you prepare a PowerPoint, you wait for the committee, you go there, you talk to people that think that they are God because they have the decision power, and sometimes work, sometimes not. When you work with technology that you use agile models, it's about the test and not the idea. So you test 10 things very, very cheap, very, very fast, and then you see the results. And this change of I have the best idea, listen me, to I have the best result of a test, listen me, it's a different mindset. And the third thing I would say is the relationship with equity. When you're a big company, corporate company, you make great salary, great perks. When you're in a startup environment, it's about the equity, man. Come here and help me build that. And we are not like, historically speaking, in Brazil, you don't have access to that kind of mindset because you work for companies that are family owned. They don't want to share equity with you. They just want to pay your salary. And the more they pay you, the more you're anchored to them.
I think your gut feeling did you a great favor. iFood today, in my perspective, in my humble opinion, the most exciting company in Latin America. And I told you that the first time when I came here in 2019, it completely blew my mind in terms of technological advance and how much more ahead iFood was back then over literally any other delivery company. And when I asked you this question before, what do you think is the single most important factor that contributed to where iFood is today in terms of innovation, in terms of market power, in terms of quality of leadership team? Your answer was culture.
Yeah.
So I want to talk a little bit about culture. What are the building blocks of the culture in iFood the way it exists today?
So I'm very pragmatic talking about this. First of all, who is the person responsible for your culture? Only one person, your shareholder. Diego will not be here tomorrow. Olga will not be here tomorrow. The shareholder of this company is the one who says, these are my rules. Second thing, culture is something to be strictly followed. There are no excuses. When I moved to Switzerland, I got offers to stay there after the MBA. And I said no when I came back. Many friends said, "You're crazy. I mean, why are you not in Switzerland?" I said, "I don't like the culture. It's not the problem of Switzerland. Cultures are different, and that's fine. I, Diego, don't like the culture. Therefore, I have to move out because the only way to Switzerland continue to do as they do is having people that respect the culture. At iFood, we have patience. We give you feedbacks, we help you. But if you don't respect my culture, you are out. There is no excuse to not follow my culture."
What's the mindset of the
Yeah.
iFood person?
Well, this person, first of all, has to have the ambidextrous mindset. Everybody at iFood has to look to my largest business and say, okay, I need a few KPIs, a few decisions to optimize the most. And then he goes to another meeting and have to say, okay, this is innovation. I don't have financial KPIs here. I need to see the results of the tests and that the client loves. Most of people, they can't do that. I can give you an example. It's very common for somebody to call me and say, how do you evaluate financial innovation? I say, are you crazy? What are you asking me? If it's an innovation, how do you know the output? What you have to measure here is the customer loss. And then you go to say the value chain accepts, and then you scale, and then you start to see financial results. So that's the first thing, ambidextry. The second thing is quick and dirty. Do everything quick and in a very simple way. Learn, and then you take the decision. I will move forward. Okay, then it's about quality. First is quick and dirty. The third thing is ownership. And being an owner is being an owner. Nobody tells you what to do. Maybe you don't need to perform the task, but you need to call someone and say, we need to solve that. The fourth thing, transparency. So remember situations where people say, I'm going to tell you something, but don't tell anybody. When we listen this there, we say, next time you tell me that, I fire you. If you're telling something that is true, that is ethical, and for the good of iFood, why you are asking for a secret? If that's bad, tell Olga that is bad. If you think that she's not the right person, tell her and show how she can become the right person. Don't need to tell me a secret. I'm not looking for secrets. So these are I would say, the main aspects of the mindset of a food lover.
iFood is the company that evolved many, many times.
Yes.
It evolved from the garage startup into a Movile umbrella, and now it outgrew literally any umbrella and continues to innovate, continues to grow. What is the hardest part of scaling yourself as a leader?
Well, I'm going to tell you one thing that is very personal and another that I think maybe can be used by everybody. On the personal side, I'm a very human-centric person. I like to talk, I like to listen, I like to help. So 3 years ago, I had a routine of talking to everybody from my team. It was 180 people, which means more or less that I have to talk to one person per day. I knew everybody. So it creates connection, bond. Today, I can't do that anymore. And this kills me. On the other side, which serves for everybody, is I'm getting old. I'm 40 years old.
Wait a second. If the goal is to live until 120 with a good mental health and the good wellness and physical health, you are just a baby.
Totally. I agree with you. I feel much better thinking like this. But what I'm saying is that there are new cohorts of people that have a totally different mindset compared to me. So how can I be a great leader if I don't understand them? And this is very tough, Olga, because at a certain point, you are so confident on what you think, on what's the formula of success and things like this. When you put that on scale with people coming with a different way to talk, different way to look at the world, a different way to challenge you, different way to evolve in their careers, it becomes a tough challenge. So how do I deal with that? I mimic this experience to my role as a father. I love my father. I admire him. But there's one thing that my father stopped to be in my life: the reference to have the technical discussions, current discussions of what is going on in the world, because he got old in that sense. He's not updated anymore. If I want to talk about creators economy, he doesn't understand what I'm trying to say. So he's a source of wisdom, not knowledge anymore. And this makes me sad. So what I envision is to not have the same relationship with my kids. I had 3 kids. What I envision is to be like 80 years old and they call me to say, Dad, I'm having a job offer. I mean, what do you think about this option? So the only way to prepare myself for this is doing this today with these new cohorts or generations that are coming with a different mindset. If I don't understand them, I will not understand my kids when I'm 80.
Generational cultural shift is huge. TikTok generation, attention span, and anxieties, but at the same time, they are so bright and digitally native, and how they use technology and how they grow with technology is so different from the way you and I were raised. Actually, we're almost the same age. I'm turning 38. I'll ask one more question before I move to rapid fire. What do you think are the most important factors and influences that will define the future of iFood and the future of the delivery market in general in the next decade? How do you think about it?
Yeah. So I would say there are 3 things that I would highlight. The first one is AI. I mean, we invest in AI since 2018. We have like 500 data scientists inside iFood, 2,000 engineers. We have 125 models, proprietary machine learned models. We partner with OpenAI for more than a year. So we are seeing changes internally that are dramatic. It's impossible to understand what will be the entire impact in the value chain, but will be dramatic as well. I had the chance to show you one of our AI models completely changing the way you search. I mean, the capacity that you're going to have to model your operation, in our case, 300,000 drivers driving around, it's unbelievable. The chances to bring creativity to the user experience will be unbelievable. Today, you buy food without integrating the experience you're going to have, for example, meeting your friends, and without integrating the receipt that you're going to cook. With creativity, you can do all of these things. Like, I want to make a list because I'm going to have dinner with my 5 best friends that I know for 20 years, and we love it to go to Greece, and I would love to cook Greek recipe for them. Boom. Try to do that today. So AI, it's the first thing. The second one is the density of the last mile delivery. Why the last mile delivery is so tough? Because it's expensive. We have a 50 reais meal, and you have like 10 reais delivery cost, for example. There is no way for you to charge a commission here to pay that and also get a profit. The only way to do that, it's through density. So the more this restaurant is selling to more people in the same building, the more I can bring the marginal cost to deliver to 0. With AI, you're going to be able to change completely economics of delivery. And if you change that, actually you can deliver whatever you want. So you maybe should think much more the current stores as inventories than necessarily a store. If you could get your food for the same price you buy when you go to the restaurant, the chance for you to order at home would be much bigger, except when you go in with your friends because you want to have drinks as well. The third thing I would say is marketing. There are several new channels to sell. And we are still trying to figure out all these channels and how they can be effective and etc. For example, communities playing video games. There are millions of people at Twitch from Amazon talking about the game that they are playing right now. This is a new channel to sell. What do you do with blockchain when it really explodes and everybody starts to use it. There's a new channel there where you can transmit information. What do you do when this creator economy becomes more professional and you have great marketplaces where you can bid for a certain price, or influencers with certain characteristics advertise our product? So there are many things happening in marketing where I really don't see Facebook, Instagram, and maybe TikTok in 5 to 10 years playing the role that they're playing.
Where would you put the gig economy in the future of delivery, given how substantial contribution of gig economy is in Brazil and emerging markets?
So gig economy is a key factor for the development of the country. The gig economy can be the next lever to change the reality of the productivity of countries, and Brazil can be one of them. So that's the first thing. The second one is how this can work only if these people have the right social protection that they deserve. We cannot see productivity as just a matter of financial gains. The key element of the gig economy to prosper is having a legal framework that balance the social benefits with productivity. To end, Olga, I think gig economy, it's blessed if we have the right leaders. If we have the right people thinking with the right mindset, with the right perspective. Let me give you one example. Henry Ford changed the way we produce cars. That's what people know because they just read newspapers. People that research and understand deeper will know that he was one of the persons responsible to bring higher wages to people that in the end make people understand why they can work in a factory line. Before this, people were going to the streets, making demonstrations because they didn't want to do that every day. So he found the right pace for the pendulum to make everything work for him, building the 4T, but at the same time for them, accepting that that amount of money, they could have a life that they don't like it, but at the same time compensates because they make money and they can spend traveling with their friends or giving education to their kids.
Yeah, it's understanding and aligning the interests,
So
I think.
it depends on leadership. Old leaders will say, no, just keep as it is. We're making money. Don't change that. The future don't talk with this. Exactly.
Let's exploit that. But you can't exploit something that's that big already without consequences for business. All right, we're going to move to the rapid fire. I'll ask you 5 short questions, and I'll appreciate your immediate responses. And let's dive right in. The first question is, what's one piece of content every founder should consume?
Fundamentals. They have to learn the fundamentals of things.
Can you give an example of a trusted source to learn one of those important fundamentals?
Yes. So Benedict Evans is a good one. So it's a guy that look for the fundamentals of things to explain why he believes it's X or Y.
It's a great Twitter account. You have dinner party with any 4 people in the world. Who's on your invite list?
Yeah, it would be Michael Jordan.
Okay.
Yes, he was the person, actually his mother was responsible to change completely the value chain of sports when he brought the concept of sharing profits between companies and players. Barack Obama, I like persons that can balance pragmatism and vision at the same time. It's very tough, and he did that. Doesn't matter if you like him or not in terms of ideas, he can balance this. The third person I would bring is, who else I would bring? Well, I would bring Margaret Thatcher to understand how a brave person that was totally out of the circle could change her country in a way that nobody expected. So at that point in the history, it was unexpected to see a woman leading the changes that she led. And remember that she had on the other side Ronald Reagan, that was much more powerful than her, but she was able to more or less balance the relationship with him. And the last person, I think I would invite Fernando Henrique Cardoso. It's a former president of Brazil who was the finance minister that created the Plano Real that brought the stabilization. and then was president for 2 terms.
If you were to describe your leadership style in 3 words, what those words would be?
Empathy, pragmatism, and ambidextry.
What's your biggest failure today and the key learning out of that? Just one learning.
I would say that my biggest failure was not understanding that I could do much more for politics in Brazil. If I had the chance to go back in the past and start to build connections with the political scenario of Brazil, to at a certain point in time migrate from what I do here in the private space to politics, I really would do that. It's not necessarily ended, but it's tougher than if I started that 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now I'm a real outsider, and I regret a lot because I would love to do something for the country in a much bigger scale that a company can do.
Thinking big. Like, you live by your words. The last question would be, if you were an alcoholic beverage, which beverage would you be and why?
That's a terrible question because I don't drink alcohol.
At all?
I
I
drink
mean, what am I
only
going to drink in New
in
York?
very special occasions, but I'm gonna try.
Let's say it represents your personality.
Yes.
So it doesn't necessarily what you drink, but what reflects your leadership
Yes.
style or your interpersonal characteristics.
I think I would be a Moscow Mule. You know this
Okay.
drink?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so it's sweet, so it talks about empathy. It's ambidextrous because you start with the cream, you feel sugar, and then you go to alcohol. So there's like very different components. But at the same time, it's pragmatic because it make you crazy, right?
Definitely hits the spot and gets you drunk.
Exactly.
Diego, thank you so much for being my guest.
you.
It was such a pleasure, and I feel like I didn't even scratch the surface in terms of the knowledge that you have to offer. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Next time in New York.